Thank you very much. So yeah, we're going to move on to our third panel session, which, as Jürgen just neatly introed, is we're going to be looking at digitising in the supply chain. It's something which cropped up quite a lot there. We're going to be looking at doing that in the global environment. If I can get a bit of hush in the room. Shh. It's your own time you're wasting. Right. So, as a way of intro to this, we talk about tomorrow's successful companies are those who can kind of orchestrate their networks the best. So this session is going to focus on those key opportunities for digitising supply chains in a global environment, looking at how businesses can decide which technology platforms will best suit their needs. So we've got three panellists for this, so please welcome to the stage Lisa Pope, who's SVP Global Strategy and Sales at Infor, Gabriella Alpini, who's from Logistic Transport Intelligence Manager at CNH Industrial, and Norman Bell, who's Group Strategy Director at Travis Perkins. Can you give them a warm round of applause? Thanks. Thank you very much. Lisa, let's kick off first of all on what we mean by digital transformation. What is it and why is it so important to the UK manufacturing sector?
So I think that's a great question. Infor, we're a global software company and we're focused on basically delivering digital solutions to our customers to help them gain a competitive edge. Half of our customers are actually in the manufacturing sector globally, which is about 30,000 customers. So we have really good experience both at the large sites as well as very small manufacturing companies, all of which who really need to embrace digital. I think there are two things that are really driving digital in manufacturing. First is the disruption that we're seeing in the industry. And it's not just the discussions we've had today about productivity and Brexit. It's also just the blurring lines between manufacturing, distribution, and retail. And certainly retail went through a very disruptive stage over the past few years as well, and manufacturers can learn from that. The second thing that we're really seeing is that there are some key technologies that now enable actual digital technology. So the first really is the cloud. And we spent a lot of time at the conference last year talking about the cloud, but what the cloud does is give everyone the ability to have world-class infrastructure and unlimited capacity, no matter how small you are. And what that allows you to do is do big data and analytics, because now you do have the ability to store that information. The Internet of Things is the third technology, and again, for us, we're used to having data and information from people, but the ability to actually track and monitor every piece of equipment and everything, and include that in that big data is key. And then the fourth and fifth technologies that are probably the most important in this digital revolution are really around mobile and social. So if the application can't run on a phone, and doesn't have the user experience of a consumer application with collaboration, it's not going to drive that change. So we really feel that those technologies, the maturing of those technologies, along with this disruption in the manufacturing industry, are really compelling executives to say, I need to look at my business differently.
Do you have any specific examples of it where it's worked?
Yeah, and I think we're going to hear from our panelists on some specific examples here in Europe in the supply chain, but I think a real simple example that might get the point across about what business you're really in would be Nike. So everyone knows the Nike brand. Most people would think of Nike as a clothing and footwear manufacturer, and that's what they thought they were. And they went and spent a lot of money on advertising with athletes who would wear the brand, and they expected that to deliver results. What they found is that their advertising costs went up, and their sales actually decreased as more and more competitors got into the clothing manufacturing. So they realized that they needed to really rethink their business, and they decided they really weren't a clothing manufacturer. They're in the health and fitness business. And that was a major shift for their executives in that company to make. But what they then did is they reached out to their end consumer, which happened to be the running community. And they built an application that allowed runners to track how fast, how far, what terrain they ran, and actually gave them indications of how they could improve their running. Well, that application and that community is now one of the largest running online communities in the world that's sponsored by Nike. So incredible brand awareness at the consumer level. By the way, their sales went up 50%, their advertising costs decreased by 70%. So ultimately, that's business transformation. And then a couple years later, they launched their Nike ID, which again was almost a reverse supply chain concept where a customer is actually going to pay double and wait 4 weeks to buy a pair of shoes. Again, not something that normally a clothing manufacturer would think of. So I think that's really what we're here to do today is challenge the state of the business that you're in and having you think about who is your end customer, what is it that they see you as, and what service can you provide along with the products. So this is the servitization of manufacturing. It's expanding what you offer that end consumer.
Yeah, interesting. Gabriella, so give us your thoughts from your experience at CNH Industrial, the kind of change it's created in terms of transport and logistics, because digitisation is making a big difference, isn't it?
Sure. Thanks. Maybe I think might have sense to describe a little bit the company, because the company itself gives the value of the technology in logistics. We produce tractors, combines, agricultural equipment, grape harvester, construction equipment, firefighting trucks. So we are talking about big, huge machines. And one of the most challenging activity that we had in the past was to ensure that we could trace our machines moving to one region to another region in a proper way, in the best speed that we could have. This was a challenge at the time because we moved from an outsourced process of logistics into an insourced. So we had to put under control all our contracts or all our lanes. Consider that we have 64 plants in the world. So we have plants in Latin America, in Europe. We have one in Basildon, in North America, in China, and in India. So we have components and machines moving from one side of the world and to the other side of the world. And seems strange and seems real, but not real, but it was at that time. It was hard to find and to know where the combine was, where the truck was, which is, I mean, in the Amazon time seems to be a joke. Like you can exactly know where your box is coming from China. How is it possible that our customers couldn't understand and couldn't be acknowledging what were their machines? And we're talking about $300,000 machines. They had no real time on the shipment overseas. And this is what we did. So we implemented a system that could trace machines and components. And this was the very first step in technology that we did. Also considering the fact that we are the company is a result of several mergers and acquisitions that we had in the past with different systems, with different processes that we had to make unique. In some cases, they're still not unique. So this was the first challenge in technology that the company found, and this was the first solution that the company developed to at least have a clear track and trace of the material and the machinery.
Yeah, so it's obviously made it a lot easier. And your job didn't even exist, did it, when you were at the company? So that's
yes,
as a result of this as well.
I think my personal story in the company, I joined CNH New Holland Industrial in 2006, and my position was not there, because at that time technology was kind of something that we were starting approaching, but we didn't have at the time the real imaging of the potential that technology might have and that we developed in the following years. So my position was not there at the beginning. So it was created, it was a challenge to create the team, to create people working on logistics, which is not frequent in companies. I mean, every company for sure has an ICT department, but my team is more focused on the technology for supply chain. So it's something for logistics and transport and logistics. So it's something more focused on, it was also an effort and a bet from the company.
Yeah, they took a risk with it. Norman, from the Travis Perkins point of view, just talk us through how the Digitising has changed things with your supply chain and customer experience as well.
Okay. Well, a bit about Travis first, I guess. Might seem a bit strange, a distributor talking at a manufacturer's event, but we're a pretty big business and we're the largest in building materials trade, and we've got 2,000 sites, more than 2,000 sites, and we've got 20 businesses. And why does it matter to manufacturing? Well, actually, on the supply side, we are the way that our suppliers get their materials to market in the main. So actually, they rely on us to connect them with their end users. But I think probably more so, most of our customers are trade customers. Many of them are one- and two-man bands, and we actually act as their supply chain. They can't run their business if we don't operate effectively. And the digital change that's going on is challenging us fundamentally, because a lot of that network was pretty basic and still is. But to be accurate and efficient, we've been doing many initiatives in this space, many of which will have been talked about at the supply chain optimization conversations at lunchtime, whether it be warehouse management systems or whether it be supply planning and forecasting systems that are now essentials. But we're finding that the digital change goes right across many areas that you probably wouldn't imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting. And one of the things, obviously, about digitisation and bringing new technology into business is about how you get the people engaged in it as well and actually using it. Because I know whenever the BBC brings in a new system, everyone goes mad. And how do you cope with that, Lisa? Is keeping your employees involved in it?
Well, and I'll have Travis Perkins talk a little bit about their experience, but I do know for Infor, one of the things we do is we use a workshop environment, and we kind of rapidly prototype first with the executives to talk through what the business objectives are, but then very much focusing, as I said, on the mobile, social, so that there isn't training involved. It's not a system, it's not a 3-year project, it's kind of a waterfall of many quick digital projects in a number of different areas where you can get impact, and even if 3 out of 10 fail, 7 are successful, and you're able to still get that quick benefit.
Yeah.
But I know with Travis Perkins, we had a real challenge with the interface, right, with the contractors in the stores, right? And so
I think where it starts is that we've been working with Infor because we've done quite a lot of work and made some strides, but then we keep hitting the same issue. Our core platform is 30 years old. Yeah. It was not built in the age of real digital, and it finds it very difficult to speak to different things. And equally, the interface that our colleagues in the branches and potentially our customers could see is really not at all involving. So when we got together with Infor, one of the big asks was that experience, first for the colleague, because that's where our customers expect to get the service from, but then ultimately for the customer is an engaging one. And so we went out and just because the technology allows you to, we can mock up a completely different experience that feels more like your iPhone app, but also brings together all of the information that the people need to give a good service.
Yeah, and Gabriella, I know you had some thoughts on this as well about engagement of users.
Yes, it is one of the most challenging things to do in the company, because people by behavior, human being is used to keep the same as they are if they can, and if they have a way to do something. So it's a matter of training, but not only, it's a matter of changing the mind of the department that are involved in using technology. And what I think it's interesting is the fact that as soon as they understand how to change their behavior and how to change their approach, they cannot be, they don't go back anymore. They don't want to go back anymore. So as soon as they find that they can do something quicker or something better by using technology, it's the time that you want them.
Yeah, as soon as you see the benefits, then you know it's important to use it. Is there any questions at this point?
I've got a good example of that
Go
one,
on,
which is probably not in a place you'd expect. Safety is a big issue with transport in particular, and we had an old work method around vehicle checks. Every day we have to check. We got 4,250 commercial vehicles that go out on the roads every day, and every day each vehicle has to be checked through a series of things that you need to be able to confirm are in good condition and ready for work. That was an old paper-based system. It was really difficult to get the drivers to actually complete it both accurately and on time, and also to be able to be sure that they're actually complying with regulation. Even, so we worked with a small business who helped us to develop an app. And this app helps them walk through the test. They don't have to write anything down anymore. They actually get led from event to event in terms of looking at these vehicles. They can use the smartphone to take a photo of anything that they can see, and the difference in terms of actual compliance with that was transformational. You know, we were struggling to get sort of 80% compliance. We're now in the high 90s because the drivers find it easy. It's a great connection with them, and the added advantage for us is we got real-time view of which vehicles have been checked at what time, and also which type of vehicle is less or more reliable and in which particular area. So that digital change, first of all, gets the colleagues engaged. It makes a big difference, but also means that we're more accurate going forward.
Yeah. One of the things that came up obviously in the previous panel was about the investments that smaller companies might have to make in order to get, to digitize and to get up to speed with what the companies they're supplying to have. What are your thoughts on that? Because it can be a big risk as well. I mean, you see, in the world of social media, you see some social media sites only last for a year and be gone, and others last forever. How do you know what you're investing in is something that's going to be worthwhile?
I think that's a really good point, and I do feel that there is even more applicability for small businesses, right? Most startups today, which are the smallest company, right, maybe 10 employees, start with an all-cloud, usually based system and go all digital from the beginning, right? That's their mantra. So there's very low risk because you can start small, and as your company expands, you can scale up. For existing companies that are smaller in size, the same is true. You can start small projects again, hosted and putting those systems in the cloud. Our approach is to definitely go after small business benefits and smaller projects versus a 2 to 3 year large ERP project, so that you're gaining incremental benefits from multiple different areas. But you are able to start small, and I do think that's a huge benefit for many of the companies that are here. And I think it's also, if you look at the companies that have disrupted the industry right now, like an Uber, that was a startup, right, with very few employees, with really a different customer experience. And as a result of that, they're now going to be one of the largest companies. But the concept is they went all cloud, they went digital, and they took that approach. So I think there's a lesson to be learned there for any size company. The other thing that I think is important to think about is that when you think about digital transformation, it can't just be about how it looks, right? What we've really tried to do today is show all the pieces that are involved in coming up with that solution. But if you build an app on very old technology and it's really slow, you won't have any adoption. It's kind of like putting a 5,000-pound tap on 40-year-old plumbing, right? The water's not going to come out any faster or hotter. So it's really making sound investments so that you deliver a whole 360-degree kind of approach.
Yeah. Gabrielle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, I think any investment should be clearly demonstrated by payback. So that's the starting point for any investment in technology. And there are paybacks that comes from technology which are demonstrable. Like we implemented one system in each cab of the trucks that give us and the trucker and the company statistics and calculation about the fuel consumption, so how much the driver could go faster or slower to reduce the fuel consumption, to reduce emission, and help their attention and their safety in driving. This is something that has a clear payback, as it's related to what was said this morning in the speaker corner. So we don't sell products, we sell services, and this is a huge service that we give to the company buying our trucks. And these are data that they can use to improve their performance, but these are also data that we can use to understand which are the driving behavior, and in our product development, which are the topics that we might focus on to create and to invest on a better product. These are the huge payback in terms of selling of this kind of trucks with this particular equipment. And this was demonstrable. I mean, it was something that we could forecast it and that we could gain by implementing some technologies on the trucks.
Yeah.
Which,
we've got a question here, Julian's asking on Twitter, which comes back to what you were talking about earlier, Nolan, about does digitizing the supply chain mean increased convergence and blurred lines between UK manufacturing and transport and logistics sectors?
In a short answer, yes.
Yeah.
I think that it obviously offers manufacturers a much more ready access to end users. It means that the guys who are sort of in the middle, like TP is, have to work harder to justify their position in fulfilling customer needs in the end. So yeah, it's a simple challenge.
Yeah. Lisa, any thoughts you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, we said it earlier, the blurring lines, right? The industries are really converging, and I think the more you can differentiate through service, that's the differentiation.
Yeah. Was there anyone who'd like to ask a question at this point? Yes, gentleman here.
Hello. Simon Gallimore from AIG, so an insurer in the room, quite unusual for a conference of this nature. But listening to the theme throughout the day about the rise of digitisation, do you think that the UK industry is sufficiently aware of the risk that comes with cyber attack as a result of that growth in digitisation?
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that, about security of data? And
it's one of the main topics that came out in the last years, especially. And but at the same, I mean, as the more the security become something risky, the more the company that offers services are kind of building a wall on security. So from the company that sells services, IT services, they are always investing more and more and more on security, because they know that every company is searching for that particular, on that specific topic. As a company, we started on, we are using a cloud now, but we started using our own servers. And the reason was exactly because of risk attack. This was a choice, this was a decision made by the company 5 years ago. I think 5 years ago there was a different vision, and IT service company were investing less in security compared to what they're investing now. So I think the more security become a crucial topic, the more the company investing in IT are researching on security and are selling product that has security as a main focus point.
yeah, it's a big issue, isn't it, in lots of areas. Any other questions? Can can I ask you one about, Lisa, about advice for those in the audience who are trying to decide whether to make that investment and embrace it?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that you can do. I mean, first of all, executive support is key, right? We really find that if the executive and the leadership believe that that transformation is necessary, then these projects they get funded very quickly and they get executed very quickly. So I think executive sponsorship is key. And if you need assistance in that area, there's a variety of sources that can provide that. We do offer a workshop at Infor on digital transformation. In fact, we have an event actually this evening as well focused on working with customers that are moving to digital or would like to explore it. But that workshop does involve both executives to get an understanding of what core business they really think they're in. We usually take the executives out of the business, so to speak, to an off-site location to get them thinking differently, and then we do rapid prototyping. So there is a lot of industry capability now, and I think market awareness around this. So I would encourage you, if you don't have somebody leading digital transformation in your company and you are in a leadership position, that's probably something to think about, similar to your role getting started, because there is a tremendous opportunity to really propel this technology into real business benefit.
Yeah, Norman, do you have any words of wisdom on it?
I think it is it's about having the right state of mind. You got to mean it, because actually you're taking a big risk when you go for the full transformation approach. But that said, if you're looking for the results, our experience says that you can get quite a lot of small steps forward, but you can't always seem to bring it together. And so at some point in time, you have to get brave and make the big step to say, I'm going to try and make things work together, talk easier, and be able to see through the whole supply chain easier than we currently do.
Yeah, I think we should I will ask you another question, if that's all right. So if you could grab your remotes, just ask for your thoughts on this. So again, just press the letter which corresponds to the answer you want to give. Our question on this one is, what is the biggest opportunity to come out of digitising supply chain? So what are your thoughts on what the biggest opportunity is? Is it A, better data and insights, B, better relationships, C, lower costs, D, better products and services, or E, happier customers? So let us know what you think.
Where's all of the above?
So, better data and insights. I think that's kind of the obvious thing you expect to come from the digital world, isn't it? Having more data about what's going on. 25% there saying better products and services, and not far behind, happier customers as well. Norman, on that happier customers point, how have you seen things change with the customer experience now for you guys? Is it definitely happier?
Not always, but on the whole, yes. And I think and it's been driven by disruptors. The building materials is a really traditional sector. There are some new entrants that have come into this market with a very strong digital platform, and they have made strong gains in the market, and that's because they make customers happier. And in the end, for them, again, I'm talking mainly about tradesmen in that context. What makes a tradesman happier is they get reliable service. If they're off the job waiting for a piece of material to turn up, then they're losing money out of their business. So that reliability, that accuracy, and the constant delivery on a promise is what makes a difference. And digital can make a huge difference in that regard, especially in our sector, which was quite slow to adopt it. But those who've shown that adopting it gives you that strength of the reliable service means you win business.
Yeah.
Happier customers.
Yeah, which comes back to the payback point about then you're paying if you're managing to grow your business and get more customers. Lisa, are there any kind of, because what I've seen a lot with businesses now, given the uncertain environment we're in, is the need to diversify more because of the fact that, the concern of having all their eggs in one basket. And I'm seeing that with lots of different businesses. Is that something which digital's playing a part of as well, making people think,
New lines of business,
Yeah.
new community, absolutely. So, I mean, it opens up new channels for sure. I mean, just the example of a manufacturer typically selling through a distributor now going direct to the consumer and offering that as an alternative. Certainly digital can play a point in that. I think new product development, there's, ways that you can, rapidly develop additional products that maybe complement. And also, I think just from an overall customer perspective, having them view your brand differently can be a game changer. So I think all of those together ultimately lead to kind of that diversifying. We have seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions, right, in manufacturing, a lot more conglomerates. So a lot of companies now aren't just in the automotive business or in the A&D business. They literally have everything from chemicals to, industrial products to automotive to A&D, all with different requirements and different regulations. So having, again, this concept of digitalization in each of those business units and potentially having different applications to address those differences in functionality versus having one big ERP system trying to run everything. That also, I think, is a better approach and obviously, gives you better business benefits.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions from the audience at this point? Yes, we'll just get a microphone to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just interested to know, in terms of benchmarking against other sectors where you think manufacturing currently is in its digitalisation journey, and building on that, what sectors do you think are really, really getting this right that we can learn from?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question. We've had we're vertical too, right? So our software company focuses on industries. So we go to market that way. So we focus on manufacturing, we focus on retail, we focus on financial services with different teams, different specialization. I would say now the awareness is everywhere, right? I think the industries that have been the most in crisis are the ones that have really moved to it faster, and that would be retail, right? So I think if you just look at retail and the online capability of and what's happened each year, the Christmas holiday sales, right? More and more stores are closing. So how do you, as a retailer, keep the revenues up and actually maybe driving your costs down? Because as those stores close, if you can continue to make it up on online retailing, but if another retailer comes in and takes that business, then obviously you're in trouble. So I think retail, because of the disruption in the industry, was probably the fastest, and many of our large retail customers have gone through and are in the process of going through very large digital transformation projects similar to Travis Perkins. But I would say now the awareness in the industries is across the board. And just the events that we're doing, every event we have, we'll have entertainment customer, we'll have a manufacturer, distributor, financial, banking, I mean, pretty much well-diversified interest in looking at digitalization across the globe.
We've got a question on Twitter as well, the team at Works Management saying, how can companies avoid being Ubered out? So in other words, have another company, a startup, come in and disrupt their industry. I know this is something I've talked to the construction industry quite a lot about, is someone who's not even anything to do with manufacturing, but will come up with, wherever they are in another country, some crazy way to do something that's all digital based, and then it completely disrupts this industry.
Well, it's the travel agent that goes out, right? But you can look back many years now and see so many industries that have been disrupted by the internet and that ability. But I think that's kind of our message is, you can't stay status quo, right? So you have to think that someone is trying to Uber your business. And so that's a lot of the focus we have with our executive workshops, is getting them to think about what business they're in. Because if you don't label yourself as a manufacturer, but you really view yourself as how the customer perceives you, and you think about the service you could offer, that's more of a startup mentality, is, what is wrong with an industry? Let's go fix that piece. Not let's try to compete head to head with Walmart, but let's go ahead and figure out a piece that no one's delivering and go after that. So that's why we encourage you to think a little bit more disruptively and worry that someone is thinking about the area that you're not good at or the area that your customers are complaining. Someone is going to solve that and potentially take away your business. So why not you solve it?
Gabriella, is that something your company's aware of? Is someone else who might come in and disrupt it?
Yeah, they did already in the past. In 2008, we had a drop in the sales. So. And main disruption didn't come from technology at the time, but we had huge disruption by taxes in Russia, which was one of our main market, and the war in Ukraine also was a huge disruption. So, and you need to be prepared. Like another case of disruption that we have that we had recently in the business is referring to the bankrupt of the Hanjin company, the shipping line Hanjin. And technology helped dramatically to understand which was the risk that we had. To make a long story short, there were rumors that the company was not solid. We started having issues in getting bookings, in getting answers by the operational departments, and in even less than 1 hour, we could understand which material, which components, and which machines we had on the Hanjin containers, on the Hanjin vessels, to ensure that our customer, that our plants waiting for those containers could have a plan B to organize themselves in case of a bankrupt, which happened at the end of August. So it was a clear case where a disruption came in the market, not a direct disruption, because we're not a shipping line now, we are a manufacturing company, but we were under pressure at that time to understand how much we were exposed to that. Yeah. And technology gave us, and this was an example at that time for the people working in logistics to give a clear example of how quick they could have the information instead of running for days with freight forwarders, with providers to understand which was the exposure. So that's, I think it's a good, it's an example of how to react to disruption in logistics.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how different it can, how things can blindside you essentially. Well, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us, and thank you for the questions as well. Can you put your hands together for our panellists? Please support Gabriella and Robin.